thanks everyone for coming. This is the third event that we've done. So this year we kind of started out the year with VentureFizz saying there's certain topics in Boston that need more conversation. So the first event was focused on product management. The second one was focused on marketing and customer acquisition. And then Rocco from NextView Ventures reached out to me about 2 months ago about user experience, which again is a major void that the conversation needs to be happening more in Boston. So I was absolutely thrilled to work closely with NextView Ventures to put on this great panel and fireside chat tonight. So tonight we've got a really great panel that features people from Hopper, RunKeeper, Dragon Innovation, InsightSquared, Fab.com. So lots of different perspectives across e-commerce, consumer, mobile, B2B. So definitely different perspectives for everyone to hopefully learn something from. So I run VentureFizz, and there's some people here. Eric Trickett, who's part of VentureFizz, and Dennis Cohane, who's our lead writer. If you haven't met Dennis, he's over there. He's covering the beat on the street for us. He's doing an awesome job. So if your company isn't getting the coverage that you want here in Boston, talk to Dennis, because that's what we're here to do. The other thing that I wanted to just quickly announce about VentureFizz, just one commercial. We launched this section on our website called Biz Pages, and the whole point of that is to give a virtual tour of startups and growing tech companies in Boston. So it's one place where you can evaluate and check out everything you need to know about companies in Boston. So it's a great resource. There's postcards on everyone's seats, so please check it out. There's 35 companies that have participated. If you look at it and you're like, why isn't my company listed? We're a hot startup in Boston. Talk to your founder, talk to Web Up Recruiting. They need a page. Thanks for Rulala for hosting this great event and putting on this great venue. Adriana Ganos was the one that coordinated everything. She's part of the recruiting team here. But I just want to introduce Tom Wiesen, who's VP of User Experience. So he's going to kick off the event.
Thank you, everyone, for coming to the very outer edge of the innovation district. Maybe not even the innovation district, we're not sure. And I think that the program is very exciting. It's very in line with what Rulala has been doing between our desktop and mobile work over the last 5 years. Company's 5 years old. We've been in this space about a little more than 4. And digital parking is real nice, so sorry about that. I just wanted to quickly introduce Rocco as your moderator for the first panel. Rob is with NextView, and prior to that, Start Capital, eBay, a bit of a guru in the world of product, startup, etc. He'll be grilling the panel laid out before us here with water. Great. All right, so Rob, thanks very much.
One announcement. The hashtag is BFWin, so VentureFizz win.
I want to see a lot of tweeting. You should have seen what it was going to be. So, shout out to my friend Sam Clements, who actually encouraged me to try to help put this together. But it's a really exciting topic for us here today. In a pretty short amount of time, I think we've seen great design and great user experience has gone from being a nice to have or table stakes to really a core differentiator and competitive advantage for any company that's trying to be of massive scale, whether you're consumer or B2B. We get a fair bit of slack in this market for potentially not having the deepest bench in terms of design and great user experience. But if you dig a little bit deeper, you find there's some fantastic people, both at the managerial level, entrepreneurial level, and individual contributor level, designing beautiful products that are being used by users every single day. And so the goal of this event was to try to bring some of the stars of the ecosystem together, share their best practices, and really, start a dialogue so that as a collective unit, we can build our muscle, our collective muscle around this discipline. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce the panelists we have here today. So, going from this side to that side, we have Tom Boats, who's VP of User Experience at RunKeeper. Quick show of hands, who here uses RunKeeper? So it's a lot of us, most of us, not enough. That's a picture from me. The next is Will Smith, who's Director of Product Design at InsightSquared. Will has a unique challenge of trying to make business intelligence for small businesses really, really interesting and compete against consumer products that people would rather be using instead. And he's done a fantastic job so far. Next to him, we have Jess Petersen, who's VP of Product at Hopper, and was also previously the User Experience Director for Carbonite. So she has a unique experience having gone from a very early stage company, scaled a product to many, many users, to a public company, and now back to a pre-launch startup. And we'll talk about that pre-launch nature later on. And then finally, we have Thos Niles at Dragon Innovation. Thos has a really interesting background because he's one of the best product people in this market, focused around the intersection of both digital and physical experiences. He was previously at Turning Guard, and before that at Gazelle. One of the earliest folks who's really thought about beautiful experiences digitally and then thinking it through all the way to actual physical product delivery. So it's a fantastic panel. Really happy to have everybody here. I'm going to moderate 30 minutes of Q&A and then have about 15 minutes of audience participation after that, roughly. We'll try to talk about 3 broad areas. The first is, broadly, what makes great design in UX. The second is how do you actually go about implementing great design in UX within an organization. And third is trends and what's in store for the future for the system. So why don't we jump in? So to kick things off, open question, a couple folks. Tell me about the best product designer you've ever worked with and what made them so special. Anybody?
Well, I was talking to her earlier this evening. One of the best designers I work with is Claire. Actually, I think she's back there. Wave, Claire. She's now at Lula.
Nice.
Very nice.
No poaching anyway.
No fair. I'm very lucky to work with 2 wonderful ones at Hopper as well. Jen Connor and Judy Keeley, no poaching. But really what makes a designer great is not just the ability to produce amazing designs, which amazingly very many people can do, but also the ability to take in user feedback and respond to user feedback and really not be precious about their designs, but to put their skills in the service of users. And that's what makes them amazing. And Claire, you're amazing.
Yeah. My example is a coworker of mine, Drew Condon, no poaching as well. I think in addition to what Jess mentioned, what makes him special is being able to see the product design from all angles. He's someone who respects technology and respects design as well and all kinds of stuff like that. I think someone who can be well-rounded in their view, someone who can really approach the product in a really expansive way and it makes him better at the job when he can anticipate technology needs and gaps and stuff like that. That makes it great.
I got one. I've got one too. During my previous travels, I had the opportunity to work with a guy that is now with Google Ventures named Braden Kovitz, and he was so bullish on user stories as a framework for the overarching goal, as opposed to a piecemeal interaction or experience. It really helps set the tone from the base. That's something that stuck with me throughout my career.
Can you talk a little bit more about what that means? How is it implemented? And does everybody agree that that's a great approach? So, Will, why don't you just talk through what that means?
Sure. It was nailing down the personas, making sure that you've got a solid story around what the user is trying to achieve all the way through to the end, as opposed to getting focused on one interaction or one little visual detail. That overarching framework has stuck with me. Do you guys could you echo similar sentiments?
I would definitely echo that. And taking a half step back, my designer, you can try to poach her if you want. Good luck to you. Is Catherine Hedden. She was my first hire at Gazelle back in 2008, and she's working with me now at Dragon. We've worked pretty closely together for the best part, and I literally mean the best part of the last years that I've been working. And what she turned me on to was sort of the process. When I hired her, we were trying to get a whole new experience stood up quickly, and I kept saying, draw me a picture of a website, let's go. And she's like, no, we're slowing down, and we're taking 5 steps back, not just 1. I used to work for a guy, who I won't name, that would always say, well, what's it going to look like? What's it going to look like? And I would always say that doesn't matter, it's what's it going to do.
So as a VC of early stage companies, taking 5 steps back sounds pretty scary. So how do you justify that?
Well, I mean, one, you're going to make up the time, right? So the end date didn't change. Just how far you had to run in that space is what changed. And you justify it by making. I mean, I think it's getting increasingly easy, like you said in your run-up. It's not as hard now to convince somebody that you need to build a truly great product, not just something that looks like a product. The first job I ever had, I was a maintenance guy. My mom worked in the school, and she got me a job in the summertime working for the maintenance guys. I was 11 years old. And one of the things they taught me there was if you don't have time to clean the room, just spray a bunch of cleaning shit around, because if it smells clean, it is clean. And I think that too many people apply that to web design. It's just because it looks good and it's got a shiny bevel button doesn't mean you've built something that's going to work for people.
Yeah. So how do you practically convince a PM, narrow-minded PM or a founder of a company that making something pretty doesn't make it good?
That's a good question. I've had this a long time. Anybody else want to take this? Go for it.
So I think, especially at RunKeeper, but I think in general, we're all in the business of solving user problems. And I think, at least with the PMs I've worked with, it hasn't really been that much of a challenge to convince people of that. Certainly, everyone has varying degrees of how much design means to them, but it's been a pretty easy case for me to say, like, listen, a user's here with this problem, and we're trying to solve it for them. I don't think a certain style of button or something like that is really going to change that. So yeah, if you can focus on solving user problems, that's really the most important piece. And I think PMs, being data-driven as they should be, will understand that.
So let's talk about data. When you're in the process, you're taking 5 steps back, you're trying to figure out, what's the right design, the full, the end-to-end interaction. What data do you look for when you're designing these products, especially when you're doing it sort of prior to a major launch?
I'll lead it off a little bit. As a team, RunKeeper, we're all focused on the same metric. So it's not necessarily for us a design metric we're trying to design for. I think everyone from designer to engineer to PM on our individual teams are focused on solving a specific problem or achieving a certain metric, and design is just a matter of process in that. If there is a design metric we look for, it's the 2 that we focus on are NPS and system usability, which have been around for ages. They're not great or perfect, but they're the best we have at the moment. So I don't know if you guys want to.
We have a couple, all of us wouldn't be doing our jobs if we didn't measure things like feature usage in the product, of course after launch, those types of things, but there's something to be said in our B2B SaaS company for some of our main metrics, our user retention. That is also a good indicator of how well we're doing. I have a raw metric is pure customer count, but also conversation with the sales guys that say, hey, actually we're winning deals for competitors. That's usually a good indicator of how our specific feature set or product's been coming along.
I got a weird one. So weird metric, stretching back from my days at Gazelle, was we had 2 conversion rates. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Gazelle. It's electronics trading. You're all getting new iPhones, trading your old ones. And we had 2 conversion rates because it wasn't enough to just jam somebody through a web conversion. We actually had to get them to get up off their couch, put their stuff in a box, bring it to the post office, and send it to us. So, our measure was that entire end-to-end. And that starts getting into real experience design, where it's, how clean is your copy? How easy is it for them to figure out where the nearest post office is? How do they know how to wrap a MacBook in a box to ship? And we saw some amazing packing material. Diapers, clean ones. Popcorn, not the styrofoam stuff, like actual popcorn. Beach towels, you name it. And so creating metrics that can encompass that sort of breadth of experience, not just can I get somebody through a conversion funnel, is always a fun challenge.
So a lot of these are sort of post-launch stuff, right? But either if you're launching a company for the first time, or you're trying to figure out along the way, like what am I actually going to put in front of customers? Like, is it just
Tom
feel?
Tom and I were just talking about this upstairs, and not to sound glib about it, but at some point you just need to have confidence that you're kind of good at what you do. And pre-launch, being able to say, yeah, I think this is good. Not that you do it in a vacuum, you get different perspectives on the team. Jess, you're probably agree when we talk about this as far as sort of everything you can do before you can start getting real data. But there's a lot of different sources to validate that stuff. But it's when you can actually start getting real data is a kind of different kind of fun.
So I have to ask Jess, right? So Hopper is reasonably known as a fantastic team, ambitious vision. There's a question about when it launches, and I'm sure it's a very intentional decision, right? So, what are the things that you look for that would give you confidence to launch? And then I'm curious from the rest of the panel, would you be approaching it the same way?
Okay, well first let me just describe what we're doing right now. We have 600,000 pages in Google. We get thousands of visitors every day. We are driving traffic to Hopper from a variety of different channels that we're experimenting with. So we have not opened our homepage, but we actually are getting a tremendous amount of real data, I would call that. And actually part of the reason we didn't open the homepage yet is because we're trying to learn from and understand all this real data that we're getting in. So real, real users coming through real channels, having a real experience on Hopper, not like, no offense, Rob, VCs, tech insiders, travel insiders. We're actually trying to distill the signal from the noise in that early kind of feedback. And when we launch, when we open up the homepage, we kind of, because we have such a buildup that's happened over the course of time here, and we feel like we'll have a good opportunity to get press coverage, etc. We want to really use that opportunity to show something that we feel is that we feel has achieved some level of product market fit already. Like we don't want to go out with something where we feel like, oh, the flow's kind of broken or the use cases aren't really quite there. We really want to show something that has that we feel confident is right.
So given that thousands of users are encountering the Hopper product through search, why not just open it up? What's the advantage of keeping the homepage behind a firewall if that's probably not how people are going to encounter the service anyway?
Well, it's really just that we have people watching us at this stage. If I could do it over again, I've been in Hopper for about a year and a half, but Hopper has been in operation as a company for about 6 years. So when I joined, I knew that this was a liability. But if I could do it over again, I would probably try to launch something. But we're also trying to do something that's really pretty ambitious. And you can't make, sorry, you guys probably don't all know what Hopper is. Hopper is a travel search engine that's trying to bring together all of this information from all over the web to make it easier to plan a trip. So it started out as a really big, ambitious vision, and our VCs are comfortable with that, and our team is kind of comfortable with that. So we definitely want to open up the homepage and understand what the traffic looks like, but we kind of also want to see, what somebody coming in from SEO looks like versus somebody coming in from one of our content channel programs, if that makes sense.
What do the other people think?
Diss on me all you want.
No, I'll jump on the grenade. Speaking as
Jess is on the grenade already.
No, I'm gonna crawl somehow under there. Dragon Innovation just launched a new site 11 days ago, right? And I've been on the team since June. And speaking as somebody on that side of the pole, I would have killed for another week, month, however long. So I definitely feel like I'm on the other end of it. I think I agree with your sentiment that at some point you just want to get it over with and then get it launched. And I don't envy you being in that spot, but I actually love the approach that they've taken as far as getting more data about how real users are really going to use it instead of opinions in a conference room about how they want to position themselves. And I think that at the end of the day, who remembers the day anybody launched, right? Pick a company. Like, who cares? I think the important thing is getting it out there and getting it used. Us as designers, we're always guilty of working on it, not quite ready, but it's taken me years, and I still am guilty of this today. But eventually, you just got to kick it off the cliff
Oh, yeah.
and make sure that the wings that you've been building for the last 2 years are going to work. So is there wouldn't it be better to actually get real users data, or you're currently getting real users
We
data?
are currently, yeah. So we're getting users in. I'm sorry. We're getting users in through the channels that we anticipate are going to be our channels. So I guess in some ways I'm arguing that the data that we're getting is real user data, more real than what we get if we open the homepage right now.
Right.
So. Yeah.
I don't have a problem with what Hopper's doing. I think it's a result of a ginormous vision that you have to then deliver on.
Right.
And in terms of an experience, I mean, if you've already set the table about what your product is going to do, and you can't launch actually delivering on that promise, I think you're right to hold it until you can actually do that. Going back, if I was in a time machine, I think Hopper might have promised something smaller earlier, and that way they might have been able to ship earlier and learn more and kind of get up to that grand vision. But also at the same time, I think it's trendy in the lean model for people to just think ship, 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 ship. And I think that's sometimes a mistake. I think there are ways in terms of user research and other things that aren't actually shipping product to actual users that you can get validation and understand the direction you're moving. Granted, the best data comes from actual users for sure, but I don't think that's the be-all, end-all of product.
All right, we'll let her off the hook. So how many people here actually work in a design user experience role? Okay, so challenge to the panel. As somebody in that role needs to interface with CEOs, product managers, to some degree clueless VCs, like marketing, tons of different constituents to try to like execute on a product vision and to drive results for the company. What are some important pieces of advice or things that you think about that help you or these folks be more effective at their jobs in terms of like managing the organization?
Include everyone. One of the things we really focused on at RunKeeper is making everyone responsible for a great user experience. You know, engineers might be really great at writing code, but they actually probably have more product chops than you think to give them an opportunity. I think we focus a lot on blurring the lines, and that includes user experience people as well. The people on my team are actually checking in images to Git and learning how to write Xcode, and we're really trying to blur the lines so that everyone is, again, solving the same problem together. And I found for sure with Jason, our CEO, and everyone else, UX was a lot of mystery. They lovingly, for the first 3 or 4 years, called it boatsing, because they really had no idea what it did. And it was also about educating people, you know, letting them know, and when you include them in the process and say, like, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm thinking, what do you think of this? It gives them a better insight into what you're doing so that you can make them feel like they're making the same decision with you. And it's not about, you know, saying, I know better than you because I'm a user experience designer. When they feel like they're making a decision with you, I think they'll have a much easier path.
I'll agree with Tom. I've had great success in presentations to CTOs, CEOs, in breaking down the black box of design, demystifying it with your process, talking through that. Not only does it lend you credence, but it helps them understand, and it helps everybody understand what it is we actually do.
What are the secrets of your process?
Myself?
Yeah.
Deep secrets. So step 0, always research. Always do your research. I'll go quick, but do market research, find out what other solutions are currently there, why are they failing at it, why are they succeeding at it. I jump into the sketchbook, sketch things out. I'll jump right into some HTML and Chrome Inspector type stuff, depending on the nature of it, and then right into Photoshop, because pretty freaking fast in Photoshop. So high fidelity mockups, hand it off, build it, whichever. Obviously, hallway test, the base level usability stuff has to get into that process too, and it does. But that's the Will Smith process, I suppose.
Yeah, our process is similar. And in terms of working with CEOs, I mean, obviously there's a wide variety of kind of level of understanding and acceptance of what UX is and what it's for and how much you can trust it. And depending on what level your company is at, you might have to do a lot more education. Or one thing that I find is really helpful is just tying it back to what does this person care about? What metrics are they trying to drive? How can I show them, how can I show the results how can I show the results that they want? Like, how can I show them this thing is going to give you the results that you want, whether that's initial user testing, A/B testing, whatever it may be. Just kind of show them the path between here's what I'm doing and here's how it makes you win. That tends to help.
Struggling for an original point of view because I agree with these guys, but something that was really useful for me is there's a design school at Stanford called the D School, and they have a presentation about design thinking that hopefully a lot of people have seen. And if you haven't, you should definitely check it out. I found that was really useful in helping sort of non-designers or even non-technical people apply a framework or understand the framework of how you're solving a problem, not just making a picture of a website or a piece of marketing collateral. And you can apply design thinking to any kind of business problem. So almost in some ways turning it around and helping them understand what you do, because it's going to help the whole organization.
So here's another way to ask a question. What's the job of the product manager versus the job of the lead designer?
I think that's going to differ in a lot of places, right? So, the Will Smith method, he's pretty freaking fast in Photoshop. I cannot literally design my way out of a paper bag, but I can hack something on a whiteboard and collaborate with my team to get something. Similar process, just different roles and responsibilities, or the lines are
Sounds
blurry.
redundant to me.
What's that? The lines are increasingly blurry, I think, between product people, UX people, customer experience people, design people, front-end engineers, and even back-end engineers at this point. It's increasingly blurry, and for me, it's more about collaboration.
For me, the difference between product and UX is really that product is more about deciding what you're going to do in the grander sense of what problem are you trying to solve, where are your priorities as an organization, and UX and design is more about, well, how are you actually going to solve these problems? Is it working or not? How do we iterate to get to something that's solving the problems in product? And really the lines are totally blurry, and people have different skill sets, and sometimes I'm doing wireframes even though I have no business doing it, and you kind of work with the skills you have on your team to get the whole thing done.
So here's a question I've been curious about. I don't know if anyone else is curious. I'm curious where design trends come from, right? So flat design. Like, where the heck did that come from?
Of Cupertino.
I mean, the funny thing is, like, Microsoft Windows was flat way before Apple was, right? And like nobody thought that was great. so like, I just don't get it. Tell me, where does this come from? So it doesn't matter.
So I joked about Cupertino, but I'd say I can think of two main areas off the top of my head. One, the existing community, sites like Dribbble that function partially as an echo chamber to keep perpetuating the same thing, but also from the titans of tech, the Apple, Microsoft, their Windows 8 has definitely influenced flat. Google's latest redesigns are not totally flat, but they're definitely towards it. Those combined with the community themselves help drive it. Also, flat design in particular, if you've got a good mastery of the basics, your color, typography, layout, you can get pretty far at making a pretty decent looking thing. So that, coupled with design as a pretty recent industry, make for, I would say, a lot of flat design coming out these days. What do you guys think?
I have no opinion on design trends, and I'll get yelled at if I talk about them, so I'm going to pass.
Yeah, I don't want to get in hot water either. I think you just made a very compelling case for why Flat Design's popular. I know that I do think that there's a lot of echo chamber that happens. I know as part of our research at the beginning of anything, we'll spend some time thinking about, well, what else is out there that we like. We also try to find things that aren't anywhere near the problem set we're trying to solve, but are good, beautiful experiences, and see how we can apply those, both online and offline. Something that I have not made the time to do, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but I want to start watching more cartoons. I've noticed with the only way I can get my daughter to sit still to brush her hair is if I let her play with the iPad. So we started watching old Looney Tunes cartoons, and that stuff is amazing. It's stuff that people were doing by hand in the 30s and then 40s, and some of especially around typography that they were doing, just sitting there with a blank piece of paper is so inspiring. So for me, looking at the past is a great place to find inspiration for the future as well.
Cool. Well, why don't we open it up to the broader audience here for the next 15 minutes or so. So I'll try to be somewhat effective. Yes?
So you touched on this a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit more specifically about kind of the politics of design, and especially sort of the trends that go together as an organization is growing and the founders who sort of own the vision or might have bequeathed their vision for the company are moving into different roles, and perhaps people come into leadership in the organization that might not be as connected with the founding vision. From your experience, how do you navigate design at that point? I guess tactically is one part of it, but also politically within an organization. I think that's a challenge that I've seen several times, and I'm sure a lot of other people have as well.
I guess I have a bit to say about this from my carpeted experience, but I guess all I can really advise you to do is just make sure you talk to everybody a lot. It sounds really stupid, but you can very easily, as a company gets larger, just stop talking to people that you need to connect with on a human level just to have a good working relationship and to build the trust that you need to be able to go to this person and say, hey, look at this, what do you think? And just kind of keep that channel of communication open. It's just amazing how, things can get political when there's such these little factions and teams, and, like at Carbonate, it was sort of like UX started to come, we started to build our UX team, and the marketing design team was already there, so there's this sort of tension between, okay, well, does the website belong to marketing or does it belong to UX, and who makes what decision, and it gets kind of mushy. But if you can kind of, just make sure that you're working together and sharing your work and kind of including each other in the process, I find it makes it a little bit easier.
Sorry, I'm gonna step over so I can see. I think definitely echoing Jess's points. One thing to note is that it would be great if everyone lived in harmony at startups and stuff like that, but it just doesn't happen. Embrace tension. Tension can be great. I had a product person I worked with for many years that we just really didn't see eye to eye. Everyone had a running joke, or anytime we agreed, everyone would stop in their tracks. We couldn't have been more opposite, and we just had a mutual respect for each other, and the fact that he had a different perspective than I did, and had a different perspective than he did, and that tension we both felt brought us to a great product spot. And I would also say, in hiring, just be that constant voice amongst your team and make sure everyone's touching on that. For a while, I can't do it anymore, time restraints, but for a while I actually interviewed everybody who came in, whether they're engineer or any other role, just to get a sense for what their user experience mind was like. Could they tell a story? Could they explain something from beginning to end? Because, like I've mentioned many times before, we're all solving the same problem, and if everyone's responsibility is the user experience, then definitely have a voice in that from the outset.
Question, how do you incorporate A/B testing or multivariate testing into your design process?
Not yet, is the answer. Not yet. Really, at the stage of the hopper is that we're doing more qualitative design, more qualitative evaluation, and the quantitative is not at the kind of A/B stage. But as you mature as a company, it seems like some point it becomes, like when you're trying to optimize a funnel, sure. We're not quite there yet.
How formal is that qualitative testing? What does that actually look like in practice?
So it's not ridiculously formal. We kind of use a combination of looking at, we use usertesting.com like it's our job. Well, okay, it is our job. But, but we use usertesting.com all the time. It's like it's free. That's a good way to put it. And that's great because we are a consumer product and it's easy to get users that way that have a relevant opinion to what we're doing. But so there's sort of a judgment call evaluation being made there, and then we're looking at our metrics in Google Analytics really to see where our traffic is and where we should put our attention. Does that answer your question?
Similarly, I tend to gravitate towards earlier stage projects where, you know, the guy I used to work with, we had a category that we called "can't hurt, can only help," and we'd say, "This can't possibly hurt," and let's see how it goes. So often we would do A, B testing, and if it actually did hurt, then you roll it back. When I was at Gazelle, we were getting to the stage of maturity where we could actually start doing tests, and we had a meaningful enough volume that you could actually get an answer reasonably quickly and not have to wait so long that you forgot what the question was. But I'd agree with Jess. It's, you know, once you're optimizing funnels and trying to find a real sort of which one of these paths is the better path, it plays a huge role. But I've always sort of been envious of these bigger companies you hear about where people can change a button color from like pink to light pink, and it makes a tremendous difference in conversion. I can't wait until I've solved all the obvious problems and can get to that.
Anything to add, Will? You work with some pretty analytical people.
You know, for the analytics that we provide for our customers, we've got a sprint dev process. We iterate quickly. We get a quality V1 out, see where that leads to the next V2. But I couldn't speak to our marketing's A/B testing. We do I alluded to before, we do the base level usability test in the hall, but at this stage, it's get something out there that we can get feedback. We've got a core group of beta tolerant customers that we go to and talk to, and keeping that dialogue open is, I guess, the best we can do at this stage. That's what we do. That's what I do at this stage.
Other questions? Yeah.
So everybody makes a straw man, and you know, usually it's yourself or people in the room. You know, hey, I wouldn't want that, or this looks great to me. But have you guys had any experience using like formal personas, like designed by a third-party company, where they come in, you spend a bunch of money, and they, give you these bunch of like, here are your users. Have any of you worked with any of that, or how's been your experience? Like, how do you figure out who you're designing for, and how do you put that person in the room and visualize them?
No, I've never done anything that highfalutin and fancy, but
I'd like to so.
But yeah, I mean, kind of, but kind of not. For me, I think the way I've tried to get in front of users anywhere is to actually have them come in and talk to them. We used to do a thing at Gazelle where I would bring people in, try to give them some nice stuff. I used to bake them cookies when we were small. Thank you. And talk to them about what we're doing, and really, more importantly, get them to start talking to each other, and then just sit back and listen. And that's how we developed our personas, more sort of collectively, by actually talking to the people.
Yeah, I'm with him. RunKeeper didn't do anything third party or anything, and in some ways, I feel like that's a little disconnected. It's a little weird to me to have some other company tell you who your users are, if that makes sense. We did ours in-house. We definitely have personas. We have about 7 or 8 personas. We conducted interviews, whether it was bringing them into the office or over the phone or Skype sessions or whatever it was. And pretty quickly, I think about maybe 20 to 30 users, some trends emerged. It was pretty obvious what the breakdown was. And in terms of keeping them top of mind, we actually designed cards that are actually more like poster size papers, and had them taped up near every team's desk space, so that we actually found stock imagery of people who look like might be what this person looked like, and really it's a great way to put a face to your users, even if it's not actually a user. It personifies it, which a persona should do, and that's how we do it.
I'll share one thing we did at eBay, which was like maniacal in how structured they were about this. I don't know if this is like the craziest thing. This is like more than 10 years ago. We had a program called Voices, which was, in retrospect, super sophisticated. So we had a sense for what our segments of our users were and their personas. And then basically every quarter, we would create a cohort of every persona. I don't know who would do it. Somebody would recruit a representative of each cohort of each persona, maybe 2 or 3, and they would be part of the Voices program. And what you would get as a member of the Voices program is monthly calls, and as a product person, you would sign up to get a slot in that call so that you could get feedback from those people directly. And they would actually have, I think a couple times a year, in person, like stroll through the office. And so we literally had like, you know, dozens and dozens of Voices classes. So not only would you understand the personas, but you would understand the sentiment of the personas over time, because you had a cohort that was 2 years old, 18 months old, 12 months old. It was actually pretty incredible. I don't know if that was just like a big company being a big company, but like, I thought it was amazing how structured they were about it. And as a PM, it was incredibly useful to be able to have this reliable channel of direct end user feedback to go to, you know, and it was just part of our process. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you guys were just talking about like user testing that you've done, you know, in the hallway and what have you. So I've done user testing, like, you know, sitting down in a Starbucks and buying people coffee and saying, hey, will you come and take a look at this thing? I want to dive a little bit deeper into whether or not it's better to, one, do individual like user testing or to do group user testing, and then when you're trying to, I mean, there's probably the end of it where you know there's a little problem and you're saying, hey, how would you do blah, or how do you drive and start asking those open questions to get people to kind of help you find problems, I guess.
Yeah, I'll speak to that a little bit. We've never done group user testing. For me personally, I feel like, you know, that's going to add a little bit of a bias. People have a different reaction when they have to speak in front of a group sometimes. They might not give their candid feedback. So we definitely go with the one-to-one route. I think there's also plenty of ways to get usability testing wrong in what questions you're asking, and it takes practice. It's really the only way to get to the right open-ended questions. The first couple times that I sat in on one or watched one or did one myself, it was really easy to try and help the person out or ask a leading question. And I was actually supremely frustrated the first couple because I really wanted to do it right, and I just kept messing up because it was like, oh, no, I kept leading with this, or there was this wrong question, or something like that. But it just takes practice, I think, to get to the open-ended questions.
I think the best thing to do is to ask them to do something and then don't say anything.
Yeah.
It's hard not to say anything.
All right, maybe 1 or 2 more questions here. Go from back over there. Ignore this side of the room. Sorry.
So how as a within a company that's trying to launch either a new product, a new version of a product, or either product for the first time, who sets the quality standard for when that product is ready to go out? Do you have your design and UX team, who if you rely on only them, it would never launch, it would never be perfect enough? You know, the product managers, CEO, who they want to put it out today, any state it is. So who sets that standard for what quality piece gets released? How do you guys do it?
So within our product, we have, I would say, myself and working with our chief product, we define a minimum bar of how good it needs to be to ship within the product. Now, part of constant iteration is getting it updated, but even if that doesn't happen for a few weeks or months, having it up to that minimum bar of good enough to be in the product will keep our overall bar of the quality of the product high. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no.
Can you guys?
Have you ever like laid in front of the train tracks and said, I am not shipping this, otherwise I'm leaving?
Thought about it sometimes, but in reality, it's not what's best. It needs to get out.
Yeah.
All right, last question. All right, Sam.
So some of the universities around here have human factors or industrial design types of disciplines. what is the role of someone with a human factors IB type of degree versus someone who has, say, a graphic design degree versus someone who has more of a coding, HTML, CSS type of background? What is the role? What do each of those different types of people, what kind of role can they play in doing overall design?
At least to me, degrees don't mean anything. I had a music business degree from Berkeley before doing user experience. And I think while you might learn specific skill sets from each of these degrees, it really matters where your talents are, and more importantly, what you want to learn and what you're willing to get out there and just do. The guy I mentioned earlier, Drew Condon, he had a human factors, and he's probably the most well-rounded guy we have on our team. He sometimes does visual design, usually interaction design, handles a lot of user research. I think the user research part is what he got most from the human factors. But I don't think that shoehorns anyone in any specific direction. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not.
To the point that somebody coming out with an undergrad degree is just in graphic design and you want to break into this kind of field, I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not at least learning code, learning some other things, because I think that in that level, they're trending towards irrelevancy with the way that the lines are blurring so quickly.
Totally would agree with that. If you only know how to do one thing, learn how to do something else. Because you always need to be a better designer if you understand how it's going to get coded, and if you understand what your user testing people are going to ask you to, how they're going to structure their tests. I mean, you should always be doing part of everything.
Yeah. But at the same time, if I had a budget that would afford one of each of those, I would absolutely hire all three of them to teach each other what they're doing.
Cool, well, thanks so much. I would have a round of applause for our panelists.